You spent weeks interviewing and you finally hired what you think is an A player. Now what? This is where most people screw up. They don't have a structured onboarding process to take someone from A player hire to A player performer. Now, I find that most people are on one of two ends of the spectrum. Either one end, they got nothing. So you just have people show up and you're like, good luck. Here's the job. Go do it. Or the other end, it's super technical. It's cumbersome. It's 50 bajillion steps and you bog people down and they never get to doing the role that you hired them for. Now, my guess is if you're watching this video, you're probably on this end of the spectrum. So what I want to do in this video is I'm going to walk you through the process, how we do this, how we've onboarded hundreds of employees at selfpublishing.com. I'm going to walk you through the 5 key principles on how to onboard. And if you miss one of these, they're not going to be onboarded successfully. I'm also going to walk you through the 6-step process on exactly the steps in order that you should do. And then at the end, I'm going to share some advanced tips that we've learned the hard way on how to successfully onboard. So stay tuned if you want to onboard your employees successfully. Now let's start with why onboarding matters. So most companies, they rush this or they skip this step because they're overwhelmed, right? The reason you hired someone is because you have more work to do than people to do it. And so the last thing you have time to do is to properly set someone up for success. And it feels like a waste of time. All right. But I got to tell you from experience, having a system for this, having a process for this process will set you free. It's going to save you a ton of time long-term. It's going to help that employee hit their productivity mark. So hit at least 70 to 85% productivity within their first 2 to 4 weeks on the job. And it's going to build consistency long-term. So I look at it as kind of it's a short-term effort for a long-term gain. So I know I'm going to sacrifice a dozen hours, maybe even dozens of hours in their first month on the job. But if I do that well, 2 things are going to happen. Number one, they're going to be way more productive, which means I'm going to have the fruit of that for as long as they work for me. But then number 2, and especially if you're doing this for the first time, I'm going to use that to create a system. And so the next time that I got on board someone, which this is my goal for you watching and implementing this video, is it takes half the time or 25% of the time because you've built a system that anyone can follow. And I got to tell you, I screwed this up. I'll never forget the first employee that we ever hired. We hired him. We had no onboarding. And we hired him in a customer support role. And so we were running this big launch, this big challenge, and our servers were crashing. I mean, it was blowing up. And so we said, there's this tool called Zendesk, which is what we use for customer support. And we said, here's the Zendesk login, and there's 1,000 support tickets in there. We've never logged into it. Have at it. And so it was just kind of sink or swim, which there's something to be said, that was a very clear directive, but it wasn't good training. So fortunately that person did swim, but it's not a lasting strategy to set your employees up for success. So step number 1, you need to teach and reinforce the core values. Okay. This is really important. It might feel like fluff. If you're doing it right in the hiring process, which by the way, I've got a whole other video on what I call my A player hiring process. It is a masterclass in how to hire well. So if you haven't watched that video, definitely go watch that video. And this should be in there. So this is our ethos. This is our core values. This is what we believe in. So you should filter that out in the hiring process, but then you need to teach and reinforce it immediately. This is why and how we do things here. That's the first and most important thing. So they're walking through those core values to understand if they get to that and they say, this is not aligned, do not pass go, do not collect $200, get out. Second thing, really, really important, you need to align them on company and personal goals, okay? So hopefully you got your company goals created somewhere. If you're following the scaling up framework, you've got the 1-page strategic plan. If you're following traction, you've got your VTO, right? So it's like, all right, this is the vision, this is the goals, all that stuff. So you need to align them on that. But then secondly, this might be the most important thing in the whole onboarding process, and this is often missed. You got to make sure that you have clearly defined personal goals for them in their first 30 days and in their first 90 days. As Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. And this is actually a big mistake that we started making, is we followed all the stuff I'm teaching in this video. We've created great onboarding processes for just about every position you could think of. And I woke up one day and I realized that we're checking the boxes really well, but we're not fulfilling the goal. And so it's like, okay, we're killing it with our onboarding checklist, but we're not helping people achieve the ultimate goal, which is to get them to ramp. And so you can't have someone ramp successfully if you don't define and cover the goals up front. And so what I want to make sure that we define and that you define in any onboarding of any employee is, what are your 30-day goals and what are your 90-day goals? All right. And then everything that you do in the onboarding process is in support of that. Seems pretty obvious, but when you get into the minutia, it's kind of counterintuitive, because it's like, oh yeah, but we need them to fill out their healthcare information, and we need them to set up their pictures for all of the logins, and we need them to get into LastPass. And yes, all of those things are important, right? We need them to have access to all the stuff. But at the end of the day, what's the point? It's for them to be successful and them to successfully ramp. And so that is kind of the litmus test for them. And hopefully you're following our eval process. And so you've got a 90-day eval with them where you can see, are they being successful? But you got to define it up front so that everyone on the team knows, hey, the purpose of this onboarding and the purpose of all of our stuff together is to help you succeed in your first 90 days. All right, I've beaten that horse hopefully to death, so you do not make that mistake. Number 3, build baseline skills and product knowledge. So they need to understand the baseline way that you do business and stuff about your product or service, enough so that they can talk to customers or prospects in a knowledgeable way. All right. Now, I'm biased, but I think the ultimate cheat code for this is to write a book on your process and just give the employee that book. And so that's what we do at selfpublishing.com. Just give them the book and say, hey, read this as part of your onboarding. Now they instantly understand how we do things, what's the terminology, how we help people, all that stuff. So if you have one, great, use that. If you don't, you should probably write one or create one, but I know that's a heavy lift. So for the purposes of this video, just have a basic, streamlined way that they can get up to speed on what you do. And then number 4, you need to set clear expectations and challenge performance. So hopefully you've already done this with the 30 and 90-day goals, but I like to cover their job scorecard. All right, which again, if you don't know what that means, go check out the hiring video. We talk all about that. So I like to walk them through, here's your job scorecard. Here are your KPIs. So these are the key performance indicators that you're going to be measured on. There's top 3. There should only be 3, and they're in order of importance. And then here are your 30 and 90-day goals. Okay, so I want them to clearly know this is what success looks like. And then I want to challenge performance along the way. All right. And not in a way where I'm being a jerk, but just in a way where I keep refocusing them back to the main thing. So here's the most important thing, and let's get back to that. And then number 5, you need to hold them accountable with micro corrections. Okay. If you're onboarding someone for the first time, or maybe you've done it a bunch of times like I have, it's still uncomfortable to give people feedback. Right? Because, it's conflict, or it's weird. It's whatever. Maybe you don't have a problem with that. It's still uncomfortable for me to this day, but it's really, really important. Right? The kindest, most caring thing that you can do up front, because they want to succeed, right? They want to succeed. You want them to succeed. Well, how can you help them do that? Just give them small corrections and hold them accountable. Great job on this, but there's just one little thing that we should change for next time. Cool. That's it, right? And so now all of a sudden, they should always have feedback, know where they stand, and know where they can improve. So those are kind of the 5 key principles that you need to make sure are covered in onboarding. Now, what about the 6 steps? Step 1 is your pre-onboarding checklist. Okay. So this is largely up to you and up to your team, but there's a set of things that need to happen before their first day. Now, if you got an office, they need to know where it's at, how to get there, how to get in, right? But if you got a remote team, I call this the keys to the virtual office, right? So once you offer them, once they sign and they're getting ready to start, what's the checklist of things? And you probably need to set up their access. This is where so many people that make the mistake, they have someone who just shows up on day 1. They don't have logins. They don't have access. They don't have direction. They don't have anything. And what you end up doing is burning their first day. You just light it on fire. And they get nothing done and maybe they're even just sitting outside the office because no one's there yet. What time do they need to show up? All the things, right? So you got that pre-onboarding checklist. This should be completed by HR, by your assistant, or by you if you're a solopreneur or you don't have someone taking care of that stuff, right? So your pre-onboarding checklist that needs to be completed before day 1. And then number 2, this is the urgent first day tasks. Okay. So sometimes we'll even have people complete this ahead of their first day. If they're really motivated, they want to get started, even better, because they can hit the ground running on day 1. Right. So this is the non-disclosure, non-solicitation, non-compete. It's setting up their logins and all of the software. We want to make sure they get that ahead of time, because for us, we have a project management software, and that's where our onboarding checklist is. So we need to get them that access ahead of time, right? So it's all of the things. Maybe it's signing up for healthcare. Maybe it's, giving us your address, all the information that we need to get you paid, like all that stuff. Those are kind of the minutia that needs to be completed on day one. That's step 2. And then step number 3, these are the primary tasks. So kind of the week 1 priorities. And we just have all this mapped out for people. So say, all right, now once you got through the minutia, here's the most important things to start getting into the company as a whole or getting into your role. And then number 4, what are the secondary tasks? So maybe this is week 2, you can start getting into this stuff. So we want to make sure where it's not death by onboarding, which we've certainly fallen into that trap many times before and probably still do so some to this day. It's not onboarding, it's waterboarding them with videos and tasks. Now, it is helpful. Like people always comment that our onboarding process is really, really good because it's very thorough. But you got to be careful not to just jam it on in the first 2 days and then, all right, cool, you're on your own. All right, so what are the things that they need to do week 1? And you can kind of spread it out so they can start getting into the role. And then secondary tasks, what are the things that you want them to get into on week 2? And then number 5, this is the initial training. So it's role-specific learning. So this is where you need to have videos, playbooks, process on what they're doing. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm onboarding a salesperson. Well, I want to have the conversation structure that we use. Right. And so when you're talking to prospects, here's the conversation structure that you use. Maybe we'll do some role play. I want to also have live call recordings to say, hey, here's 5 call recordings that you can listen to start in on this initial training. And then for their secondary tasks of week 2, maybe I've got different types of calls with different types of prospects, different types of objections, all that stuff. Right. So now I'm teaching them the process and they're able to get on the phones, get feedback, get better. So that's the role specific learning, so that they can start being equipped with the skills that they need to thrive in the role. And then number 6, this is the gradual training. Okay. So again, this kind of keeps you from front loading all the onboarding stuff. So 30 to 90 day big picture, what should they be learning? What should they be reading? All that stuff. So again, if I'm using that sales role, I might say, here are 5 books that you can read in your first 90 days. I might seem ambitious to you, but here are 2 books that you can read, right? We have what's called a month-long job shadow for our sales reps and for our SDRs, where we say, hey, over the course of a month, listen to one of these calls per day, and you're going to get better at your job. You're going to learn how to talk to every possible prospect, every possible objection. Like, here is the full training. For our content marketing engine, we've got a comprehensive content training. Here's our brand guide. Here's how we do content. Here's our voice. Here's all this stuff. And that person can keep going through that to make sure they have the gradual training that they need to be set up for success long term. So that's the 6-step onboarding process. Now let's move into advanced tips. This is stuff that we've learned the hard way to onboard at an even higher level. All right, the first thing that I recommend you do here is you separate company onboarding from role-specific onboarding. All right, this might not matter that much if you're below 10 employees, but especially as you start to specialize roles, this becomes really important. So what we've done is we say, hey, this is our generic company onboarding checklist. All right, no matter the role, everyone needs to do these things. There's logistics stuff, there's training stuff, there's core value stuff, there's access stuff, all that. All right. But then now once you've done this, and this is really important, you got to complete this to unlock the next step. But then for most roles at the company, we've got a role specific onboarding. Let's say that you're moving into an operations role or a finance role. It's like, okay, this is the role specific onboarding for this. It's documentation, it's playbooks, it's checklists, it's all those things. But now all of a sudden, all right, I've got the basics. I'm going to get into the role-specific onboarding for my role. And so now those people are armed with the playbooks, the knowledge, the training for the specific role that you're looking for. All right. Now, the quick disclaimer here is maybe you're hiring for a role that's never existed. Well, if that's the case, well, then just find some resources or at least give them direction on how they can continue their training. So maybe there's books that you like on this topic. Maybe there's videos that you like on this topic that's external. I've talked to a bunch of people who told me, Chandler, these videos on your channel, I just sent them to my employees. And so they use my videos and it's, okay, here's why playbook matters. Here's how we do XYZ. Here's how we do company book clubs. Here's how we do offsites. Like they just use my videos. That's totally fine, right? So maybe you don't have to create it internally. Maybe you can outsource and use external resources. Another advanced tip is to pair new hires with an advocate. Okay, so maybe this is your onboarding advocate. It's someone who's in your corner who's done your role. or who at a minimum is just someone who they're responsible for helping you get up to speed. This is really helpful. It builds relationships, camaraderie, and also gets them more customized support from someone who's not you or not someone on the onboarding team. Right. And then thirdly, this is another thing that's worked really well for us, is you can run daily Q&As, or onboarding huddles is what we call it, where, hey, 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day for your first 2 weeks here, we're going to show up and you ask any questions that you have. Right. And then we're going to maybe also go through some onboarding stuff in your checklist, but we'll pull up the checklist. Oh, cool. Looks like you still got this outstanding. Do you need help with that? Do you have any questions? And then those people can come with questions. Super, super helpful. And then fourthly, it's kind of last tip here, is you can create a dedicated onboarding Slack channel. Okay. So this is for that person to support them in their onboarding. And then you could pull in the important people. So maybe it's their manager, maybe it's the CEO, maybe it's the HR person. It kind of depends on how big your organization is. Maybe all of those people are you. And so it's just you and them, but then they don't feel weird blowing up all these different Slack channels or your email or whatever else. There's just one place that they can ask all questions specific to onboarding. It's a temporary channel that after they're through their 30 days, you can just archive it. So I'll leave you with this. When it comes to onboarding, it's really, really, really important. You need to slow down to speed up. Spending more time up front is going to save you weeks, months, years of your life later. So slow down. I'd rather invest too much time into onboarding than not enough. And then also remember, you don't have to do everything yourself. Okay, unless you're a solopreneur, then sure, maybe you have to do it yourself and you leverage some videos and stuff like that, like this. Maybe just send them this video. But use your assistant or use some key person on your team to help lead the onboarding experience so that you can stay focused and so that your leaders can stay focused on big priorities. Okay, this is something that I do, about 60 employees now. We have someone who is dedicated to this, right? So now it's an HR and recruiting person. This is a new role for us, though. We used to just be my assistant who helped with this. So now they're taking the minutia off of my plate and off of my leader's plate so they can focus on the big things that move the needle. So that's all I got today. What I want you to do to implement what you learned is start today creating the outline for your onboarding checklist. Okay. Maybe you just hired someone and that's why you're watching this video. Perfect. You're in luck. Just create a little checklist based on this. And then maybe the first thing that you do is you have them help build the onboarding process, right? Plot twist, you don't have to do everything. You just hire this person to help you. Well, they can help with this. Right? So you say, hey, I've got some basic stuff, but as I run you through this, I want you to help create the checklist that you wish that you had, and we're going to use that for the next person. So draft your onboarding checklist. If you have an assistant, have them create this. If you have an HR or recruiting person, have them create this for you. You don't have to do it yourself. Just send them this video and have them walk through it to create your onboarding checklist. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We pour so much into these videos, try to make them as tactical and helpful as possible. If you like today's video, click the like button, click the subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. It helps get this content in front of more people. And then most importantly, comment below. All right. I read and respond to every single comment. So if you got questions about this, if there's something that I missed, comment below. I'll read and respond to the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.